Then I took a smidge and applied it down there.
This one's wife. Poshness for the little people. Hello, I'm H.G. Tudor. When I created this thumbnail using this quotation, it put me in mind of it being some kind of cover version or adjacent to music for the masses. Those of you who are long-standing listeners of my work know that my favourite band is Depeche Mode, and Music for the Masses is one of my favourite albums that they created alongside Black Celebration and Violator. But all of that aside, Poshness for the little people certainly does sound like it's a piss-take creation that would be utilised, and piss-taking is entirely accurate, as we're about to find out. I have been providing you with analysis in relation to the latest rebrand from this one's wife, announced as she took a wee in the garden and spoke to camera. And since then, there has been the usual analysis across social media, which has resulted in largely ridicule in respect of another attempt to make herself seem interesting, viable, and to try and make money. I haven't so far provided much of a reaction from mainstream media. A general peruse through the news headlines shows that the majority simply report on the fact of the rebrand taking place in a relatively neutral way. There are some which are enthusiastic about it, the usual brown-nosing supine publications, and, as you'd expect, the Daily Mail was critical, calling her the Duchess of Disaster. The Telegraph lambasted it also. But there's criticism that has come from an interesting quarter, not only in terms of the usual stance of this particular news organ, but also the manner in which it's been delivered, which is worthwhile sharing with you because it's hugely entertaining. This comes courtesy of the journalist Emma Brox, who writes for The Guardian. For those of you who aren't aware, The Guardian is a left-leaning British newspaper and ordinarily would be seen to be relatively supportive of this one's wife as a consequence of her liberal outlook and the fact that she would play the race card. They might not get behind her completely because she's part of the royal family, something the Guardian isn't too keen on. That stated, though, ordinarily they wouldn't give her a good going over word-wise, even though she thoroughly deserves it for her continuing ridiculous behaviour and her rampant narcissism. But this has changed. Let me share with you what Emma Brox has written, and also what this tells us in respect of this one's wife. In these days of darkness, we must take delight where we can find it, and one reliable source is the Duchess of Sussex. In her latest venture, this one's wife, who occupies the tricky position of having a large platform and not enough to fill it, see also Brooklyn Beckham, launched a new lifestyle brand that she promised in a short video would be beautifully weaving everything together I cherish. Food, gardening, entertaining, thoughtful living, and finding joy in the everyday. You can barf if you like. The brand American Riviera Orchard is dead. Long live the new brand, as ever. The Duchess and her husband Prince Harry have to do something, and good luck to them. But it's hard not to study the rollout of As Ever for signs of the widening gap between this one's wife's self-image and how the rest of the world sees her. That is an insightful observation. As ever, writes the Duchess on Instagram, means as it's always been, or some even say, in the same way as always. The some in this sentence apparently referring to the dictionary definition of a two-word phrase that no one has ever had trouble understanding. Once again highlighting the condescending nature of this one's wife. It's ridiculous, of course, as is the hello little people tone adopted by the former Royal Highness in keeping with the general attitude of the famous towards the unfamous, namely, one of stating the bleeding obvious as though sharing the key to existence. Again, this journalist has got this one's wife exactly right, that she presents everything in that stupid, breathy tone of hers with the attendant vocal fry, as if she's sharing the secrets of the universe with you. This one's wife tells you things which you already know or are blindingly obvious, as if she's providing you with some great revelation. This is representative of the fact that, first of all, it's her general air of superiority driven by her narcissism, the fact that she's not very bright herself, and also the way that the narcissist likes to make it seem as if they're involving you in some kind of confidence to make you feel special. Psst, I'm telling you that as ever means as it's always been. Shh, don't tell anybody else. And it's this complicit approach that this one's wife thinks stupidly will endear her to you as an individual, that it'll make you feel special. That's how basic she is. The journalist continues by explaining, still, I find myself sympathizing with this one's wife who in her Instagram post and its accompanying video faces the stark challenge of having to pad out thin material. Zzz. This is what I do, she says to camera, and I haven't been able to share it with you for the past few years, but now I can. What is the it here, and what has stopped her from sharing it? It may involve jam, as did her previous brand, which she launched by sending limited edition jars of preserve to, among others, Kris Jenner, Mindy Kaling and Tracy Ellis Ross, who apparently also got a fresh bag of lemons. Anyway, whatever the content, she hints darkly at some whispers abroad that forced her to jump the gun and share news of as ever before she was ready, because I wanted you to hear it from me first. The fact there is no story here makes this one's wife's insistence that she is getting in front of the story all the more enjoyable. But the more curious aspect of the announcement is the you to whom she refers, and the idea she clearly has of her audience. The celebrity lifestyle space is crowded, ferocious, and notoriously fickle, littered with the carcasses of former brand leaders such as Chrissy Teigen, Target and Bloomingdale's distanced themselves from the star around the same time as she was accused of, and later apologized for, cyberbullying a woman called Courtney. The space is also dominated by market leaders such as Gwyneth Paltrow and Rachel Zoe. This one's wife is a minnow in these waters, but of course has her own secret weapon she is not shy about using. In the new video, she deploys good old Harry to hold up the camera phone, triangulation as I explained in my analysis, and drop a few posh tones. Is this thing on? To remind us that even if as ever isn't royal, exactly, it is at least royal adjacent. The new name is clearly a reach for something classier and more timeless than its predecessor, American Riviera Orchard, which sounded like a range of scented gift baskets you'd find at a discount shopping outlet, or the pair's charity arm, Archwell, a play on their son's name. Both brands have an aspirant lower middle class vibe about them. Ooh, burn. That, if she understands it, is certainly going to infuriate this one's wife. Aspirant lower middle class vibe. Which it would be rude to point out were it not for the fact that Harry and this one's wife trade on class as part of their branding. And this again demonstrates the problem that this one's wife has. She puts stuff out there thinking that she's allowed to comment and you're not allowed to comment back, but she doesn't appreciate that she does so many dumbass moves that it's going to be criticised. And so here she trades on class, but then demonstrates she has an aspirant lower middle class vibe. What they are selling isn't poshness itself, which strictly speaking should entail low comfort, hole in the elbows, bad cooking and drafty housings. But much like Trump and his performance of Billionaire, a kind of ersatz poshness they imagine might appeal to the peasants. It's a hard one to get right, and with a new brand name, this one's wife seems to have changed course in the direction of, say, a Calvin Klein perfume or something a bit more abstract and upmarket. Although for my money, she was onto a more of a winner with the obscure and personalised brand name The Tig, her first attempt at lifestyle content that had to be shelved when she started dating Harry. As she explained at the time, the Tig was derived from an abbreviation of her favourite wine, Tinello, and had about it the confidence of something genuinely felt, rather than a brand name that has been kicked through a comms team. Which brings us to the Duchess's understanding of audience. Discounting the forfeiture of sympathy that comes with money and privilege, there is something akin to pathos in the video that I find painful to watch. This One's Wife's "Ah, shucks, I know you love me" tone assumes not only goodwill, but abject fandom on the part of an audience, which I suspect is at least 50% made up of those who regard her not only critically, but with downright derision. It is hard to witness sending lots of love. She signs off with noblesse oblige and an almost charming dedication to what she imagines we think of her. This is an excellent article because it demonstrates not only is this a shitty brand, but also how this journalist has This One's Wife sussed. That she identifies that she has very little material that she needs to pad out. That there is a growing gulf between how This One's Wife thinks that she's perceived and how she actually is perceived. The way that she talks down to her audience, the way that what she's created isn't genuine, the way that she talks is such that she thinks that everybody loves her, even though, of course, there's plenty of evidence that demonstrates that not the case. Her narcissism chooses to ignore those that criticise, telling her that she is loved. Accordingly, not only is this an excellent article in terms of hitting the nail on the head time and time again, and if it were the case that This One's Wife were to read it, although I think much of it would go over her head because she's a bit of a dimwit herself, it would of course be challenge fuel. But the other, and perhaps the most fundamental aspect of this, is that you have a left-leaning newspaper not just criticising her, but taking the piss out of her. That is something of a seismic shift and demonstrates, as I have maintained for such a long time, that if you give the narcissist enough rope, they will hang themselves. That with This One's Wife, whilst there were many people wanting that sudden exposure of her, that one big event that blows the whole Sussex gig apart, the reality has been that for a number of years it has been a downward spiral. The fact is, the press benefit from not having such exposure if such exposure were possible. Instead, they continue to get their clicks and their advertising revenue. But what happens is, because This One's Wife is a useless mid-range narcissist, she just cannot help herself but keep causing gaffes, schoolgirl errors, mistakes, and they rack up time and time and time again. And now, when you have The Guardian not only criticising her, but criticising in a way where everything that's stated is a Mickey take of her, you know that she's past the point of no return. That plug hole is staring her in the face. She'll circle it a few times yet, but with this move with relation to As Ever, more and more people are seeing, goodness me, she's flogging a dead horse. When's she going to stop? That those that hitherto might have given her a pass are now thinking she is truly useless and ridiculous. And who caused this? All the people that comment adversely about her? No, because for all of the voices out there that criticise her, they are not heard on the same scale as This One's Wife being reported about herself. As I explained a couple of years ago when I did my countdown of the people that This One's Wife had to watch out for, the ones that were most likely to cause her a problem, you may recall she was at number 1. My prediction is correct. She is the one that's going to bring herself down. And all of the nonsense that she's done in relation to As Ever is demonstrative of this, and the comments of this particular journalist from a hitherto relatively supported newspaper indicate that the worm has certainly turned in that regard. I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for listening.